Howdy, folks. Happy. What day? I've lost track of days. Happy whatever day it is. Guys, how is everyone doing in the chat? David, Vlad, Milan, thank you guys for being here. I do appreciate it. It is Thursday, and we are going to get back to some art today, which I'm excited about. But before that, I want to say just a few more things that have kind of been running through my head. Obviously, everything going on in the country right now has been at the forefront of my mind. Yesterday, we did get some good news. The Attorney General from Minnesota upped the charges on the cop who murdered George Floyd, and the other cops that were standing there and present were all charged. So that's all good news, and it's a bit of evidence that protest can affect change. It's a little start. We need a lot more to go, but it's promising and hopeful. I did want to say a couple more things though about the whole situation and racism, and not, I think, because I think that my opinion has a ton of value, but I think that it's not talked about enough, and that's part of the problem. And I was looking through Instagram today, and as opposed to the kind of sea of black we've seen, 2 days ago and then partially yesterday, it all kind of feels a little bit back to normal, and not everywhere, but more so than it was. And what I am thinking for myself, and this is just for me, I think that I want to make sure for myself and for my family that we're not kind of falling into a trap of, well, we posted the black square, we've said our piece, we've donated to some organizations, we're done. I think that there's a lot more work to be done, and I think this isn't judgment for people that aren't continuing to talk about this. Everyone's, I hope and I trust, dealing with things and trying to better themselves in their best way. That seems right for them. For me, I'm worried that I think it's easy to feel like you've done the things that you need to do, and now that's enough. And so I wanna, for my personal part, for me, I want to make sure that I don't do that. And so I was thinking about what can I do, and my wife is buying a whole bunch of books on how to raise non-racist, racially aware child, like how to do that well. And to be honest, my wife and I we're just figuring out how to be parents alone, and let alone the complexity of everything going on. So she's been buying some books about that, buying toys that have been suggested from some webinars about racial sensitivity when raising a child, a white child specifically in America, so that we can be part of the solution and not the problem. And for my part personally, obviously on top of helping my wife as much as I possibly can in all of the things that she's thinking about, is also making sure that I'm being as aware as possible of where I kind of fall on that part of the problem or part of the solution line. And I think that if we're not mindful of it, if we feel like we've done enough just by doing a little, that's kind of, at least for me, not enough, I don't think. And so this isn't going to be a daily show about my thoughts on race and me trying to learn, but it is going to come up a bit more because I don't want it to be gone from my mind, for me as a person and trying to be a better member of society. And I think one of the things that I've at least noticed or thought about in the past day is that as a white person in America, we don't talk about race that much. We kind of avoid it, and I think that one of the reasons is that it's kind of the ostrich thing. If we put our head in the sand, it's not there, right? And that's a very white privileged thing to do, because we can choose to ignore it if we want, as opposed to those who are presented with it in their face and to their detriment day in and day out. But I think one of the reasons it's not talked about as much as it should be, is because there's a lot of fear involved in talking about race. There's a fear that I've had the past 2 days when I've been talking about it on this channel, and definitely at any time I'm having a conversation with a black friend or a black person I don't know. Like, there's a fear that I'm going to say something wrong and be mistaken as a racist. Or even worse, there's a fear that I'm going to say something that's going to reveal that I actually am a racist. And not talking about it is part of the problem. And so, I'm going to try and talk about it. And I may say something wrong. And if I do, please let me know. I think it's just letting it be something that we can all talk about is going to be a good thing for our country. I know a lot of you guys don't live in America, and I don't know what the race relations are in your part of the world. But at least in America, it's not talked about enough, especially by white folks like myself. And so, if I say something wrong, I apologize in advance, and I would appreciate you guys letting me know if I do, in an effort hopefully to be better. So, like, the one thing I want to say is that I don't think of myself as a racist. I never have. I hope never to. And I don't think that I am a racist. But I do know that I've been impacted by growing up in America as a white kid that was mostly around white friends and went to school mostly with other white kids. And inside of that, right, like, that affects you, whether, like, even though I know that all people are equal and that, no race is better than any other, I know that very, very well, but I've been exposed to a very different reality than that belief my entire life, as everyone has in America. And so we tell ourselves that we treat everyone equally, and therefore we're not a racist, and therefore we are part of the problem, part of the solution, and not part of the problem. But I want to say one thing specifically about that, is that I know when I was walking, before we moved to Maine and we were living in Brooklyn, if I was walking down the street late at night and I saw a black person walk towards me, I would be lying if I said that I didn't have a physiological reaction to it, right? That there's some ingrained fear that shoots out some adrenaline or, kind of heightens the senses. That's not anything that I have control over, right? I get to choose whether I cross the street or turn down the block or go the other way or stand under a light or just do the right thing and nod to them like I would any other person walking by. Which makes me feel like, well, you could have crossed the street and you didn't, therefore you're not a racist. But the reaction, that's still a racist reaction, the physiological reaction that I have no control over. And I think that most white people in America, if they really thought about it or cared to observe it, they would see that reaction in themselves. And I think that it comes from two places. One is this systemic racism throughout our entire country, which has said that if you came from a life of privilege, you were mostly around white people, and therefore you don't have as much just literally lived experience of being around black and brown people and neighbors. And on top of that, I think that we have all of the what the news is portraying as, black crime and bad neighborhoods are always picturing black people. We have all these things floating around in our subconscious really, really deep that our brain reacts to without us getting to say anything about it. And so you still get to choose how you react to that, whether you choose to do, the right thing or the wrong thing. But that reaction is impossible to control, at least at the time. But you do have the option of making sure, as a responsibility on yourself, of making sure that you have a more diverse friend group and that you have more experience with people of other races. And that's a failure of my own. I've not reached out and made sure of that. I've kind of said, like, I have the black friends that I have that, you know, have been in the same social circles as I have, and that's enough, right? And I don't think that it is. I think that letting myself think that I've done enough on that front is letting myself too easy. So I've been thinking a lot about that, and I think that I need to do better myself, being proactively on the right side, and not just kind of floating somewhere in the middle of, you know, well, not racist, but not pro positive change. And I hope that other people can think about that and see it as something that's a problem. The fact that exists is a problem, and I think it's pretty prevalent. So that's what I have to say today. I am going to be checking in on the race stuff and kind of myself as we move forward. I hope you guys don't mind, but it's a really toxic thing, and I think that hopefully by continuing to think about it and read about it and educate myself and expand the diversity of my friend group, I can start to be a more positive influence on where we're at in the world. That's the hope. And it's at least a plan of action to start from. I have a lot to learn. I freely admit it. So we have some art to look at today. And that art is something I've been thinking about. The only thing I've been thinking about is how race is going on in the world. And so this is kind of, you know, the art piece, the art image, the sketch, the doodle, whatever we want to call it. I made last night, kind of while I was thinking about all of these things, and I've had a couple of tough conversations with family members and friends, and my wife and I have been talking about it nonstop. And even talking about it does feel hard. Like, it feels like even like that little bit of effort is a tough one, and it's an easy one to back away from. And so this was kind of inspired by that kind of emotion. I will show you, in case you guys didn't see it on Instagram. I will... the screen's moved. This screen used to be over there on that side, and I'm all over the place. All over the place. But we'll get there. There we go. So this is the final piece. We're gonna watch kind of how I made it. I'm gonna talk a little bit about it. But just to kind of give you an idea of where we're headed towards. Oh, there we go. I ended up sculpting this. I had kind of like the idea in my head. I didn't do any thumbnails for this, which I usually do. Obviously, I kind of had this idea of this child like standing up to somebody much bigger than them. And I kind of had the idea of the pose that I wanted him in, which I kind of got. And I had a different idea for the composition in my head, but I went straight into 3D to kind of start roughing it out, and I ended up actually sculpting it in Blender before bringing it back to 3ds Max to render. So it's a little bit of a different workflow than we've seen previously on this channel. But let's talk our way through it. And the video misses a little bit because I forgot to hit unpause after I went and grabbed a beer or something, and there's a little section missing, but it's okay. Daniel and Nitin, I missed you guys. Thank you guys for being here. Okay, let's see. I think this is the right one. Yeah, I think we're going. Alrighty. So there's going to be some pauses in this. I think I ended up working on this kind of overall for like 3.5, 4 hours, something like that. And I did it while watching some videos, and then talking to some friends about kind of how they're feeling about everything. So it's not like the smoothest. You're gonna see like the screen pause a couple of times, but basically right now I'm just trying to kind of get everything into a rough shape to kind of rough out the quote-unquote sculpts, and I use sculpt loosely because I do not know how to sculpt well, but I want to learn it. But I wanted to get everything in place, so I kind of had an idea of the composition before I started messing with that. Milan, those are not Jamas clay textures. Those are some rock textures from Megascans, but kind of doing the same type of thing as the clay textures are, right? Like the sculpts you guys are going to see are not pretty. If they were to be rendered flat, they would look terrible. But I kind of have, for those of you that have been following Instagram for a while, or you just look at the little icon, I have this thing about like humanoid figures clad in stone. So yeah, there's stone textures that are kind of masking the bad, the bad or poor lackluster sculpting work, but also I think giving a different vibe to the whole thing. They don't feel like sculptures to me. They don't feel like they're like carved out of stone. They feel like they're a thing that's made out of stone. To me, that's how I interpret it. Yeah, I'm a sucker for it, and I think because I'm kind of excited about getting back to sculpting, which I have not done like in 2 years. We're gonna be seeing, I think, a little bit more of that. I think that's gonna happen. So you can see that like the figures are roughed out literally in just like stretched and warped spheres, and then remeshed in Blender. Now, a couple of things we're gonna see very quickly. I do not know how to sculpt. I had some sculpting videos playing in the background. I don't know how to sculpt in general. I've never sculpted in Blender before. And so there's going to be a lot of missteps, and the final result's not that pretty. I also don't really know Blender. Like, I've not used it that much. But I'm very intrigued with what's going on over there, and I want to learn more. Which I think the sculpting portion of this took me, I think, like 30 to 40 minutes. With having to check some tutorials, and like there's some like weird things in Blender that just like you expect a shortcut or a function to be somewhere and it's somewhere else, and so like not efficient and not a pro by any means, and not even a pro, not even an amateur. I'm kind of happy with how much got done in like 30 minutes. Granted, I had already roughed out the mesh in 3ds Max, which I don't know, took 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. Yeah, my curiosity is very piqued about just how much this free piece of software can do. There are some weird things that I haven't figured out, like the little bit that I know of ZBrush, besides like I used it way back in the day to sculpt out like some cushion wrinkles and each now and again if I was doing like tufted stuff. And I've used it to make these kind of like humanoid figure-y things. And then used it to like remesh a lot of stuff and to use some of their unwrapping tools and their decimating tools. And so I was expecting not for things to go nearly as smoothly in Blender sculpting, and I'm sure ZBrush is more powerful, but like it remeshed these things really quickly, which I was impressed by. It even kind of unwrapped them. Like the only unwrapping I did in this when I realized that I was getting all triangles back, which I don't know whether that's necessary or whether there was an option, I didn't really look into it, was like just their automatic UV unwrap, which, you know, considering how messy this mesh is, I was impressed by. And yeah, I mean, we're pretty close to done the sculpting, I think. And so you can see like and you can also see, I kind of keep going back to this kind of 3/4 view behind the child figure, like there. And I'm kind of sculpting in that way because that's like the kind of the composition I had in my head that I was kind of roughing out in Max, and it's not the one I ended up with. I forget why I started saying that. No idea. No idea. But yeah, it's a powerful little tool we got here. Jay, what's going on, my friend? Good to see you here. Thank you for being here. This is Blender. We're gonna go back to 3ds Max. I was just talking about it that I'm pretty excited about Blender stuffs right now. It's not gonna be replacing 3ds Max anytime soon, but I'm pretty happy with kind of the two little dabbles I've done in it. You know, the thing I made for the Nerd Rant 2 weeks ago or a week ago, and then this little like 30-minute sculpting for the first time in Blender. It didn't crash, which is more than I can say about 3ds Max 2021 in its first use, and this is the first time I've used 3ds Max 2021, and it kind of did everything I wanted it to, which, like, that's really all you want a software to do, right? Yeah, Jay, everyone's doing it. All the cool kids are testing out and experimenting with Blender right now. I think it's telling that I keep talking to more and more people that are saying like, yeah, I just tried it and I kind of like it. Like everyone's kind of like a little hesitant. They don't want to leave their favorite 3D software. But a lot of people are talking about Blender at the moment, and I think that as I'm also somebody talking about Blender, I think there's reason to. And I don't think it's going to replace 3ds Max, especially not for client work. Maybe in time, but like right now, like I can't learn a new software while working on client projects. But who knows, you know, in the future, who knows? Mike DeGenio, good to see you, my friend. Thank you for being here. And yeah, we're rocking black and white. Part of it started with, you know, I've been talking about the Black Lives Matter and what's going on here in the US a bit. And part of it's also that I have a new computer, and Logitechs are like really hard to get color right, and I can't get it back to how it was before when I really liked it. I haven't even set up the overlay stuff, and maybe I will, maybe I won't. This gives me more screen real estate to show things. I don't know. But black and white's always easy, right? At least in these situations, when you turn on that webcam and it looks awful, just making it black and white kind of makes it look good. But like, this wasn't blown out. I mean, there was no hair, but it wasn't blown out when I started this thing, or at least when I fired up the webcam. And Logitech, like it like as many times as you turn off its terrible auto exposure, it keeps coming back. So here you can see me starting to make a material, which is literally just a rock material from Megascans, like a cliff material, with black in the diffuse, or close to black in the diffuse. And here I'm realizing that I need to unwrap these things, and that the meshes are pretty messy. So I'm basically starting over everything that I've done since Blender. I have to redo because 3ds Max just crashed. And I also have to figure out how to get these things unwrapped. Because it's all being displaced, I didn't want like hard seams, like at least not hard vertical seams everywhere. But like a quick, like loose stretched unwrap was going to be impossible. You can see like the varying density of that mesh because it wasn't retopoed, and I have to figure out how to do that if I'm going to keep using Dino Topo is what they call it in Blender. And so we go back into Blender, and it does it, and it does it with like, you know, a click. No crashes, and it doesn't do a great job, but it does a good enough job. And then we actually end up seeing some artifacts that I end up leaving in because I think they look really cool, actually. So yeah. Oh, Eugene, good to see you here too, my friend. We're all over the place. So yeah, you can see I just basically, I think, Googled how to unwrap in Blender. There's a lot of little weird things that I'm still getting used to. I thought that was going to be like retopo in ZBrush, and it kind of is, but it won't allow you to like retopo things cleanly. It basically started with saying first model out a clean, good mesh to work with. And I'm like, well, that's not going to work. And then we find a little solution here that's like, once I figure out how to get to the thing, that little search bar seems to be very important inside of Blender. Where we go? Wait, I think it's doing it. Oh wait, no. And there you go. kind of clean UVs. Not perfect, but you know, good enough for what I was going for. And I think actually, so there's like seam cuts all throughout these guys, and you'll be able to see it, I think, more clearly here in a second when we can see the normal map on it. But we'll see like the effects that it left. It left this kind of like, one was a triangulation issue, which I could have gotten rid of if I had deleted the normals, but I liked how it looked. And then there's also like some breaking up, because anywhere where there's a seam, if the displacement, you know, one's going up, one's going down, you get a hole. But I thought it looked kind of rad, to the point where there was a part of me that was like, maybe I should tell them I did that on purpose. But no, it was a happy accident that I was very happy to keep. And now I am thinking about in the future doing it, because A, it looks cool, and B, it means that I never have to, you know, if I do any more of these like rock dudes, I never ever have to care about cleanly unwrapping anything ever again, which would just be amazing. Or if I rendered this in Blender, I could have displaced it with triplanar mapping, but that wouldn't work. That would definitely not work for F-Storm, because you need to use a singular map. So yeah, so now that we're kind of getting close to hitting render for the first time, and because I loaded this straight into OBS, I don't know how far along we are. Photoshop was really quick on this one. I didn't do like any painting, and I think I spent 10 minutes total, maybe 15 in Photoshop. And so we just kind of have like, right now we have one spotlight in there and a little bit of atmospheric perspective, volumetric lighting, whatever you want to call it. And we're still on the composition that was in my head. And I hope that we don't lose the section. I know we're missing a section. I'm not sure exactly how much we're missing. But as I start to kind of pan around it, like, I want the kid or the character to be the main subject of the image. And I don't think I've admitted it to myself just yet. But like, this composition does not doing a good job of that. I think I fight with this for a little bit longer before, like, I keep coming back to this one view that I kind of stumbled on, which you guys have already seen, the final image. I probably could have recognized that earlier, but you know, I can be stubborn, as it turns out. Easy puppy. Easy buddy. The dog's wandering. We have the door open, so there's a little bit of breeze going. It's hot. I haven't put ACs in yet. So yeah, so like the rock material, like, I kind of had an idea, obviously with like the Black Lives Matter stuff and everything else. I wanted to go with black rock. That was already set in there, and I kind of had an idea of what I wanted it to look like in my head. But I wasn't trying, and I'm probably talking to somebody here, who knows. I had an idea in my head, and one of the things that I love about doing sketches is that, like, if it looks cool, that's good enough. So I'm still playing with some spotlights, and I do actually use them in the final rendering, but we also put it in the HDRI. I had this idea in my head that I was going to do this whole thing just with spotlights. I don't know why. No real reason. That was not thought through. But, like, obviously with no HDRI, we have no fill lights. We'd either have to add fill lights so that we don't have those like completely flat and dark shadows, or some things for it to reflect with. Instead, I brought in a Guthrie sky, which gives like something to reflect and light the entire scene. But because I'm really just using it as a fill, so there you can kind of see the scene. I'm really just using it as a fill for the whole scene, so it gets turned really far down, and we don't really adjust it or anything else. I kind of get it to a place where, okay, I kind of like where the highlights are falling from that. That seems good. That's enough. I don't think I'd touch it again besides turning down the strength of it. But you can see, and this is one of, I think, the reasons that I like starting with sketching so much. For these types of things, I had an idea in my head. I think just a little bit of sketching would have meant a better composition, or maybe I would have just ended up at the thing beforehand. This is playing with some new color mapping in F-Storm. I finally got to upgrade since I don't have any like active critical projects in like the rendering phase right now. And now it has a black tone and a white tone, which seems pretty cool. I'm excited to play with that more and more. We go back to black here in a second, or black and white. But I couldn't help myself from at least kind of seeing what that feature is, and I'm excited about it. We will be playing with that more in the future, without a question. So yeah, and here you're just seeing me run into a lot of bugs that I don't know if it's because of this version of F-Storm or if it's from 2021. I have to install the service pack today. I hit a lot of bugs that don't know where they came from. But trying to fix, like, I know that there's something wrong with the composition. I know that the story that I'm trying, or the emphasis that I'm trying to put in the image is not coming through in this image. And like the first thing was like, well, let's put more people behind there, which in my head was not ever a thing. They end up staying, but does not end up being the right kind of something. It doesn't solve the problem in any way. Actually, can you actually see them in the final? I don't know. I didn't delete them, but I don't. The camera crop doesn't really actually show them. So I kind of was just like panning around when I came across the silhouette of him looking from the other angle, which makes sense if he's the character, to see a little bit of the front side of him. And like this view, I keep kind of coming back to, not this, that kind of like 3/4. And I think we're about to kind of lose the video. But like this view I kept coming back to, and eventually I'm like, okay, well, just do the view. I don't know why you're so set on looking the other direction, right? No good reason whatsoever. And yeah, and then so all I did was go back to that and then move the guy in and put some rocks in the background. And that's the part that got lost. And this is like 10 minutes of Photoshop that's been shortened down to like 1.5 minutes, or I don't know how much I sped this up. Whatever it takes to get 3.5 hours down to 20 minutes. However you guys want to do the math on that, let me know. Nothing too fancy. Kind of adjusting the color, trying to make sure that like the full emphasis is on the kid and not the guy at the edge, and then just pulling out just a little bit of definition. I wish that arm was a little bit different. If I could have easily resculpted it so that read it a little bit better, I would have done so. But just pulling out some of these overlapping forms just a little bit by adding some contrast in, and it's just about done. That's just some little cleanup from like the meshes. Hopefully I zoom in on the face at some point, or we can do it afterwards. I'll show you some of the artifacts when this is done, which we're almost there, that came from bad unwrapping and quickly done displacement, and I think they're awesome. I hope I can I hope I can recreate them, to be 100% honest. But I will. You can kind of see some of them there, even though it's kind of being blocked. I'm really excited about it. And next time I go, I'm gonna try and get it to do that, and it's like not going to work. This is a new little plugin that I've been playing with for the past couple, maybe week or so. It's called Exposure X5, and it's used. I came across it while watching tutorials by a lot of like fine art and fashion photographers. Seem to really like it. It has like a lot of like film profiles, which I've never really been a fan of because I feel like they usually look like shit. At least the ones that I've used. And this, like, there's a lot of really cool stuff going on in this guy, and so I don't understand it yet. And I definitely don't have much control. I've just kind of been clicking around and playing with features. But right now it's on trial for the next like week or 2 weeks. And I'm pretty sure that this one's getting bought. And I'm going to do a lot of playing with it. And then I will show you guys how I like to use it once I have like right now I have no method to using it. All I do is like click around until it looks cool. or looks close to cool. And this, I think, is this we're calling done. Yeah, that is the image. Let's see, where do we get back to all the things? Boop, and get rid of your little tunnel vision. That's water. I expected that to be beer. So yeah, you can see all of the weird stuff. Oh, come to life, keyboard. You can see all of like the weird artifacts that we get. I'm guessing like these big edges are clearly from UV lines, right? UV seams, and then these lines are, I'm pretty sure, from not resetting the normals after bringing it back into 3ds Max. Right, I reset the normals on this dude, and I reset the normals on this guy, and I don't think that you see any of like that triangulation. You see the same displacement artifacts from not having clean UVs, but you don't get this like really cool, in my opinion, like tessellation with the displacement and the holes. And so like I kind of love how this dude came out. Like I wish I could say that I did this painstakingly by hand to get this effect, and I have complete control over it, but I definitely don't. Oleg, I did not put that together, but this is very, very Tool, very Tool. Maybe that's why I liked it. Maybe in my subconscious, they're like, you've seen this before, and when you saw it, you liked it. But yeah, there's a bunch of cool stuff. And there's a bunch of cool little stuff that happens. Oopsie daisies. I don't know what's going on over here. Where you have like these little individual knuckles that got displaced. Like that looks cool to me. And there's a part of me that's scared that the next time I'm like, oh, I want to do this again. I'm just going to unwrap things really messily and we'll get it. And then it's going to come out like perfect, clean, smooth, and everything else. And I'm going to be so disappointed by it. But if it can be done once, it can be done again. But yeah, so that's the finished version. That's the, this was the raw render. Took like 9 minutes to render at 4K, something like that, 4K tall. And maybe I'll give you guys, I think I'm about done. It's like 40 minutes, we're about done. I'm gonna show you guys really quickly this exposure software. It's super cool. So basically, it's kind of like Analog Effects Pro, which we've looked at before, and you guys know I very much enjoy. And like Lightroom, kind of like tied in together. Right, so you have like all of like your basic like color, exposure, contrast, highlights, shadows, clarity, vibrance, all that kind of fun stuff. Sharpening, color, tone curves, all of that. Plus you have like some overlays to mess things up, and you have this like ridiculous world of. Let's look at some of the color ones. Oh no, I mean we're looking at a black and white image, which is not like what this is made for. But, and a lot of these are like heavy-handed, like, oh, it's sepia. But let me see. Here's some of the, I think, ones that I really liked. I think that's the one that I used. That is the one that I used. But like the tonality of this one I thought was super duper beautiful. And then there's a couple other that have just like this like very, I don't know if this is coming through, you know, all of the compressions, excuse me, but there's just like this like that one's not that subtle. I still like it, but it's not that subtle. All of these just like very kind of cool color palettes, right? Like this almost looks all cyan, but if you look like in the highlights, it goes a little bit warmer there, right? So it's not colorized. It's obviously very stylized. This one I really thought too was yellow and purple is a color scheme I don't think I've ever really made an image in. And when I was kind of clicking through all of these, I kind of thought to myself, maybe this will go from black and white to color, but then I stuck with it. This is another one that I really, really liked. So if we were to say like we want to do this one, compared to Analog Effects Pro, you're not waiting for things to constantly add up all of the time and wait. And so all of these we know they're Lightroom controls for anything that we want to bring up there and sharpening. But things just kind of go quickly, right? And we already have some noise in this image because I'm doing this on the last one. But you get all of these, you know how I feel about dust and scratches and all that kind of stuff. And of course, for any of these presets, if you like everything except for the scratches, or you know they're not appropriate for that, you can obviously turn them all off. And then they got focus. They have a nice grain. You guys know how I feel about Gaussian noise as the final noise layer. They have a very nice grain, which I think is going to be hard to see. You can see it. That's obviously way overdone. And you can control how much is in shadows, midtones, and highlights, which is super duper nice, especially if you're going to be printing anything. As opposed to doing blend ifs and stuff like that to get big prints to look really nice, you really have to control the noise. So lots of control there. And then this might be my favorite feature of the whole thing, is that what's one of my biggest what kind of distortion correcting? Can we do it? Oh, there we go. Let's like barrel roll this thing. Okay. Asymmetry. Okay, we've very obviously warped this. And let's say we apply it. One of the biggest problems that I have with Nik is that they don't save all of the last settings. And so if I didn't save that as a preset, and then I decided actually I need to go back and change something, I would have to go and redo all of those little steps again. And in exposure, if you can obviously save presets of everything, but by default it saves your last adjustment edit, so that when you open it up, it brings up the settings that you just used. Or if you like did like a long correction and you pressed OK and you're like, ugh, I forgot to save and I don't want to redo that again, but if I ever need to adjust something in this image, I need to have that back. Well, you can just open it back up and it's going to have all of the settings before. You can save it and then you can always get back to it. This is like such a stupid, simple thing that I don't know why Nik products don't have. So yeah. Guys, so that's what I've got from for you guys today. Tomorrow is Friday, I'm pretty sure, which means it's going to be Paintover Friday day. I think we only have one image, so I get to spend a bunch of time on it, unless you guys send me something in the next hour or so, and I can probably add it in. But tomorrow's going to be Paintover Friday. I'm looking forward to it, and then we have the weekend. I hope everyone is doing well out there and staying safe. I didn't mean to pull this over so that we're all staring at the thingamajigger here. That's not nice to look at. That's better. I am absolutely getting on and listening to some Tool, and maybe some Perfect Circle, which I've not listened to in a while either. That's going on as soon as this thing is over. But yeah, guys, I hope you're all doing well. I hope that you're all staying safe. I appreciate you indulging me on all of the things that I've been thinking about that are not art related. I do appreciate it, and it's not going to go away, but I hope you don't mind, and I hope that we can all be a little bit better. At least I can make myself a little bit better than I was yesterday and that I am today in the future. That is always the goal in all things. So guys, thank you all for being here. We'll be back tomorrow with a Paintover. Forget whose. But whoever has sent me one that they have not seen me paint over yet, that's going to be tomorrow. So be well, guys. Stay safe out there. Be kind to one another. And we'll see you tomorrow. Same time as always. Until then, I'm out. And it's going to get more and more awkward because I got to go all the way over to this screen. So, what can you do? Beep. Boop.